Welcome to this week's episode of the Blackbird Stories podcast, where each week we amplify the voices of Black women and our unique birthing experiences, creating an environment for learning, for healing, and for empowerment. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Woodus. Be sure and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube so that you don't miss an episode.
Welcome back to part 2 of Toneka's powerful journey to motherhood. In part 1, we witnessed how Toneka's pregnancy was characterized by hope in the midst of uncertainty, a bicornuate uterus, early bleeding, and the looming shadow of preterm labor. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Diagnosed with HELLP syndrome out of nowhere during a routine OB visit, Toneka's world changed in an instant. Alone in the thick of a pandemic with her husband out of town and her baby arriving at just 27 weeks and 5 days, she faced one of the biggest battles of her life. Part 2 picks up right where we left off in the NICU. Let's get into it.
Last time I saw my husband, I had a baby in my stomach. And then the next time he was bringing me a phone showing me our baby. It was different. I looked a lot different because I had a lot of fluid, I guess, from the medication. And so just looked like how I went in and how I came back, and looked very plump. And apparently the nurses had told him a little bit about what I had experienced and had let him know. He said, of course I didn't know this while in the hospital, but he was like, they had told him that she's very sick and it could have went really bad. She could have had a chance to have a stroke.
Right.
It was good that, them getting her out when she did helped stabilize me, and it was going to give her the best chance to continue.
Right.
But we still didn't know what prompted it. Of course, I felt fine. So it's like I'm sitting there at that point, wrecking my brain, like, what didn't I feel? What signs did I miss or anything like that? Because they said it was past preeclampsia and it was HELLP syndrome.
No, you're exactly right. And to be loopy on magnesium, you recall in great detail the events of that day. Your memory is right on target. Yes, that had to have been so scary to go through. Thank goodness your best friend was available. And you're right. You are describing pregnancy-induced hypertension with severe features, which is preeclampsia. And we understand that to be a condition where the blood vessels all over our body start to vasospasm. So they start to constrict and kind of spasm. And so it affects the blood flow from mama through the placenta to baby, which is why it can impact baby's health and well-being. And it also compromises mom's health and well-being significantly. It's a condition that we have to take seriously. We don't play about severe preeclampsia because it can be life-threatening to mom. It can cause increased risk for seizures, like you mentioned, stroke. And then for baby, we can see abruption where, because that placenta is impacted, it can also cause the placenta to separate from the wall of the uterus and then be immediately life-threatening to the baby. So when you identify features of severe preeclampsia, they did the exact right thing, which was keep you in the hospital, park you in the hospital, watch your blood pressures, because that's one of the telltale signs of severe preeclampsia is severe elevations in blood pressure way above your baseline. You were getting appropriate, adequate prenatal care, so your doctor had an idea about what was normal for you. And they were able to say, oh, wait a minute, hold up. This is not what you've been doing. This is not you. This is something else going on. And we have to pay attention. We have to pay attention when we identify that something is drastically different from your baseline. So we tell people your blood pressure should be less than 140 for the top number, less than 90 for the bottom number. So that would be a moderate elevation, but then severe elevations in your blood pressure are less than 160s over 110 specifically. We can see headaches. So we can see that the blood-brain barrier, those very delicate vessels, again, constricting, cause headaches. We're talking worst headache of my life. I've done all the things I know to do to manage this headache. I ate something, I drank something, I rested, I took caffeine, I had Tylenol, nothing is touching this headache. We start to see visual changes, not like I moved too quickly or I bent with my head below my waist. This is, I'm like looking at my cell phone, I'm looking at TV, and I've got floaters or deficits in my visual field. Again, those blood vessels constricting. We start to look at liver and kidney function, right? And you had mentioned your liver enzymes were severely elevated, because we know that those delicate blood vessels that supply those organs can be uniquely, significantly impacted by this condition. So we start to see protein in our urine. So protein is generally one of the nutrients that our body keeps as a part of our nutrition. But because the kidney is impacted, the protein that it would ordinarily keep, it starts to spill. So you start to see large volumes, large amounts of protein in your urine, and you start to see the inflammation around the liver. And so So you had preeclampsia with severe features that progress to HELLP syndrome, where you start to see hemolysis or a breakage of blood vessels all over the body. You start to see an elevation of liver enzymes. You start to see low platelets. So that goes along with that liver function test, and elevated kidney function sometimes too. So that definitely is a emergent condition. And the treatment is delivery. The treatment is delivery. Thank goodness you were able to deliver past what we call the age of viability. And so, you know what I'm saying? So 24 weeks is what we consider 24 weeks. Yeah. The youngest a baby can live outside of mom's body. And so, you know, praise God that even though we didn't get to the third trimester, we were beyond that stage. And so there were interventions even available for us to offer a baby in order to support baby through the transition of being delivered early. Yeah. That's, you know, it's not anything that you can necessarily predict a whole lot of time. There are risk factors that we have identified. We know that women who look like us are at increased risk for severe preeclampsia. We know that young moms are at increased risk. First-time moms are at increased risk. Moms over the age of 35. Anyone who has a history of pre-existing medical problems, those can sometimes increase our risk for severe preeclampsia. But sometimes it's one of those things that can just come out of nowhere. Like you mentioned, went hiking, walking your dog the day before, feeling fine, and just like a ton of bricks came out of nowhere, but you did the right thing going. You kept your prenatal visits. You didn't skip out on those routine exams, making sure that you were doing well, that baby was doing well. And that was all that you could do. There wasn't anything that you had any control over. There wasn't anything you could have done differently or changed, except what you did do, which was to make sure that you were being present and coming in for those visits and getting the checkups that you needed. What was your NICU experience like?
Amazing. You know, even though I didn't get to take her out of the NICU, still, even, you know, 5 years later, those nurses hold a place near and dear to my heart. I still speak with some of them to this day. Just from the very first day, I think I got to meet my daughter for the second time at around 5 p.m. the next day. So she wasn't yet 24 hours old, but they were able to remove the catheter, and he was able to wheel me down. And just, she was in bed 7. And just from the moment I walked in the door, like I remember the first thing, I walk, he wheels me up to the bed, and I stand up and I kind of look over the incubator, and they was like, "You have a little feisty girl," you know, like, what's her name? We don't have a name for her yet. They're there and you're telling me, like, it's a nurse on this side handing me a lovey. She's like, "Here, put this in your breast. She needs this to, you know, smell your scent," you know, and that sort. And they just give me the same rundown that I've heard them tell Justin on the video the night before. And so they didn't, you know, expect for him to translate the message. It was just like, "Hey, celebrate, you know, like, you're here, you get to meet, you know, you get to meet and interact with your baby." And so Jody, Miss Dory, Lauren, wow. I had a Jennifer, there's so many. And I have a notebook that I kept all of those notes and stuff in. And so, yeah, those NICU nurses at Methodist, like, I love you guys, but they really made a situation that was very scary just great looking back at it. I couldn't ask for anything better. Like, even back, they told me, you know, "Hey, if she checks off this, this, and this, you can hold her. When this happens," anytime test results came back, I remember they tested her Tuesdays and Thursdays that was her normal schedule. I got to speak to the actual, I guess, the nurse's doctor. So I got to personally speak with the doctor that was over, you know, the babies in the NICU. I got to meet her physical therapist, her respiratory therapist. Like, this little baby has like this team, and I got to meet all of them personally. Like, they took time, even though, you know, hey, this person may come over in the middle of the night. I was just shaking hands and, you know, learning about my child and, you know, what they were doing for her. And so it was very hands-on. As much as I wanted to be there, they allowed me to be there. They were very empathetic about the, you know, it being COVID and, you know, not being able to have visitors. Of course, there was an extra layer of, you know, things being shut down. So only me and Dad could visit at all. And then once I got discharged, only one of us could come.
Oh, wow.
Or Dad. They really encouraged me to breastfeed. They were like, I planned on doing it anyway, but they were like, "Mom, we need your milk." You know, your milk. Now, if you can't do this or you don't want to, we have this option and that option, but we want you to go upstairs and we want you to pump. We want you to come down here and we want you to pump. They'll, when I came down, to sit with her, they'll, lift the blanket or turn her a certain way, bring me apple juice, just anything that I needed. Like, their bedside manner extended past her and, to me. And they just made it as comfortable as it could be. They allowed us to bring in certain, like maybe like onesies or stuff we had for, because of course we couldn't dress her right then. They said I had a ways to go. But I remember there was this special, like sort of pad that like we later on, that was for NICU babies. It was like this royal purple and it was like really fuzzy and they made it where like have that. I was able to bring in a few of her books and, just things that we had like sitting here waiting at home to sort of create, like that was her little cubicle and that was her little room, and I could just come and go in those drawers and get the little things that I needed for her and tend to her. And I was able to bathe her. I think it was around I held her day 5. Yeah, so I think it was in June by the time I got a chance to hold her. I think every day after that I came in and I held her. And I only recall one time in those 28 days where they were like, she's been a little, finicky today. So, she may not let you hold her for a long time. I did have to put her back in there. They allowed me to bathe her. It was a couple instances where they had to have a sterile. It was something where like I had to stand back. They had to like take blood or something from her and it had to be like a sterile area. But like they didn't leave. They just said, hey, we have to do this, but it's as often as you want to be here. And so it didn't matter who was on shift. Anytime I was at home and I called, they relayed those messages and they were just great. I can't speak highly enough of them.
These are the worst mistakes Black women can make when choosing an OBGYN, assuming they'll automatically prioritize your safety, ignoring the signs when they dismiss your concerns, and not having a plan to advocate for yourself. Sis, I've been there, and that's why I'm so glad I found the Mocha Maternity Survival Guide, Choosing the Right OBGYN. This guide gave me everything I needed to avoid those mistakes, from conversation starters to tools for assessing their care. It's the ultimate roadmap to make sure you're seen, heard, and protected. Don't take chances with your health. Get your copy today and make the choice that could change everything.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm so excited. It's such a blessing that you had that experience, that you felt supported, that you had that communication. That's great. That's fantastic. Dealing with this while healing, what was that like? You're healing from a C-section. You're getting past severe preeclampsia. You're trying to balance taking care of yourself, recovering yourself, and being present for your daughter. What was that like?
It was crazy. To think. Of course, well, I opted to my parents and everybody, hey, I'll come, and I'm just like, the baby's not here, you can't see the baby. I want them traveling and, just sitting there with me, because the same way I would have to bring the phone in and show them, we could do that over FaceTime. And so I did do the healing, that pregnancy alone, me and Justin here. I remember my bed being very high.
Things we never think about until there's an incision on our abdomen. Yes, yes.
To have a C-section. I was like, oh, am I going to do this natural? Or am I going to get an epidural? So, and then at 28 weeks, like, we didn't have anything like in her nursery. So I remember we took like this step stool that, it's called a squatter potty, and it's supposed to help you align yourself right to defecate. Using that as a step stool to get in the bed. I kind of, so no, you're going to get that adjustable base where it's but there was this pillow that wraps around me. You could lay the baby on top of it, but I didn't have a baby here. But that thing helped me so much because it was, I just learned how to move around with it. And I think the newness and the uncomfortableness of pumping, I think that kind of minimized, like, that's nothing. you have a 6-inch cut on your stomach, like, so it's not really a pain I remember anymore because it was just so uncomfortable things going on at that time. I got very constipated. I remember that. And so being constipated while healing from a C-section, that's no fun because they tell you not to. They tell you, don't, you don't want to laugh, you don't want to sneeze, but none of that stopped me from like, okay, I wanted to see that little girl. I wanted to hold her. I wanted, like look at her. So I don't even think my brain registered what my body was going through because I was just thrusted into mom mode just that fast, just that
Jump
early.
in and swim. Yeah.
Thank goodness I healed okay because I wasn't taking all of the precautions that I should have been taking. And then I'm just a naturally impatient person. So anytime I was pumping and Justin wasn't available to immediately come get the milk and put it in the bottle and refrigerate it, I'm climbing out the bed. I'm walking in the kitchen. I'm pulling over the freezer that you don't supposed to be lifting anything or doing it. So just telling myself, don't pick up boxes from the door. Like, I hadn't had a baby shower. So it was just like, ding dong, pack coming. Like she had to get a bed. She had to, like, the nursery came together in like 5 days. And so if he's out running errands or doing something, I was bad. It was just sit down like you've had major surgery. And I think due to the magnesium and just the sheer joy of like having her, she's thriving, she's okay. We're not out the woods yet, but I had 27 great days of reports from the NICU. And they literally told me the first day I came in, like, hey, they let me know what the options could have been. They was like, hey, some days you'll have good days, some days you'll have bad days. Just imagine a roller coaster. But I literally did not have a roller coaster. It was more like a cliff. So it's like a mountain. So it's like it went up, 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 up. She had to have one blood transfusion like day 12. And then we up, 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 up. She's gaining weight. She's doing great. And then that day happened and everything just down fast.
Can you tell us what happened on day 28?
Yes. So day 27, this is after Father's Day. I think Justin went twice. Every other day, mama had it. I'm sorry. And he allowed me to do that because, of course, it's like I am breastfeeding. Being near the baby helps with, the production and things of that sort. I recall, I can't forget that day. I went to the beauty salon and I got my hair done. And after that, I was like, hey, can you take me to the hospital? So I waddle in and she's there and I'm like, hey, how's she doing today? And I recall them saying like, oh, we have to dial her up about 2%. She's struggling a little bit to breathe. She's breathing kind of shallow today, but we did the test. Everything is fine. It was a Wednesday night. And I remember holding her, and while holding her, they bumped her oxygen up like one more level. And she, still same little feisty girl, kind of fussing a little bit. And hindsight, I recall, it's like she's never, like, they've never had to, like bump her up while I had her. It's like she just sort of seemed restless. And I was a little concerned, but I pushed it down. And that's honestly one of the regrets that I live with because I decided to trust them. And so they came and they, bumped it up and they sort of explained. They were like, hey, this is typical. Sometimes they just get a little tired. They had been increasing her feedings and she had been doing great. But a baby of that size, like to feed, it takes a lot of energy. I think they told me that night too, like her due date was August 23rd and they were like, she'll be home before her due date. And so it's like whenever she had the capacity to take another milliliter of milk or to wean back off of this, like they were already like testing the levels and stuff like that. And so it wasn't that big of a deal that, they would have to bump it up or bump it down, or that one day she was on 29 and the other one she's on 27 or something like that. But I did remember having this little pain in my chest that like, just ask one more question, but they had already checked off all the boxes. They had already said, like, she'll get her labs in the morning. We're keeping an eye on her. Her labs were literally like in the next few hours. I remember leaving, I think I left before midnight that night, and I'm pumping every 4 hours at this point. And so I recall waking up at about 4 a.m. And the nurses, they work 12-hour shifts. So the people that were there at 11, they're the same people there now. So I remember picking up the phone to call and check in. And I said to myself, I said, Toneka, nothing's changed. You just left 4 hours ago. They'll call you, when they had to do the blood transfusion, they called me right away. It was like, look, if something changes between 9 and 7, call them, because it's like I'm there for hours and then I'm going to call and check. And I knew I was going to call and check right there after 7. So I remember pumping at about 4:50. I opted not to call. And I remember waking up at 6:30 and I looked at my phone and I had a missed call from the NICU. I called back and one of the nurses said, Justice is we named her Justice. I'm sorry. Look, they said, Justice is very sick. Get here now. And I said, we'll be right there. And I remember I didn't stay on the phone to hear anything else. We jumped up, we threw on clothes, left out the front door, and we're in we just grabbed the first car. So it's like I have this itty bitty sports car. I just remember bumping up the road. I don't recall grabbing my pillow, but it was just like, my baby's in trouble, get there. And so when we were about halfway there, I got another call and we're calling, telling our family, like, pray. They saying that she's sick. We're headed to the hospital. We don't know what's wrong. And so I missed that call in the midst of all of that. And there was a voicemail. The doctor said on the voicemail, he said, hey, I hope you guys are on your way. He said, I think she's going to die. And like those words are frozen in my head, and we held on to that voicemail for like 2 years, and I finally just deleted it because I couldn't bring myself to like listen to it again. So I've heard the words, she's gonna die by the time we get to the hospital. It's still COVID. Justin goes into the roundabout and he lets me out. I remember like sprinting, and in the lobby they make you do a temperature check. They had already like alerted like that she was coming, but I get there and it was in this first layer of people. She's like, ma'am, I need your temperature. It's an emergency. Look, I'm walking right past you. I get to the security guard. He's expecting me. He opens the door and allows me to go back. And normally the NICU doors are closed. Like they had them open and like the nurses were kind of like standing there lined up, like ushering me in. And I remember like they didn't even make me stop and wash my hands, so I didn't think about it at that time, but I was like, oh, this is probably bad. And so I get to her bedside and they're doing CPR on her. And so the only thing I could do was like pray. So they let me in and I'm at her head and they're working on her chest. And I just remember praying and like, come on, God, save her, God, save her. And he literally told me in that moment, all is well. I just kept repeating, all is well, all is well, all is well. After a certain period of time, the doctor told them to stop, and they checked to see where her heart rhythm is beating, and it was between 30 and 40, like it was low. So they tried to resuscitate one more time, and then at that point, he turned around to me, and somebody turned around to me and they said, "Do you want us to unhook her and just hold her?" I said, yeah. And they brought me a chair, and I remember sort of breaking down right there in that moment while they were like taking the tubes and stuff out of her. But I was still hearing like all is well. I don't know. I don't think I connected the dots between them disconnecting her from stuff and like this is enough. I witnessed them resuscitating her 2 times. I didn't learn until after the fact that was their 4th time resuscitating her. So they had done CPR on her 4 times
that night
until the time that we were there. So the story was around 5 a.m. I was pumping at 4:50 and almost called. Started puking. They said she started like puking into her feet. They said they emptied her stomach. That still didn't help. And they did some pricks or something. Whatever. There was like, most times, I think they called it NEC or something, necrosis of the something.
Necrotizing enterocolitis. Yeah. An
And so,
infection in the gut. Yes.
and so they were saying like, oh, I think she has a little tummy infection. We think it was a tummy infection or something, but whatever it was, her little body, by that time she was was she 2.3, 2 point? She had gained like a whole pound. So if she was 1.8, she was 2.8 by that period of time in the 28 days. They were just saying her little heart couldn't, handle it. And so they laid her there on my chest and they wheeled her into the room. So 5 a.m., I think we got there around 6:45. They worked on her and they pronounced her at 7:45. The doctor came in and I think she still had a heartbeat because like I could feel like sort of the rise and fall like of her chest. I recall the doctor came in twice and, put the little stethoscope to her heart and he didn't pronounce it until the 7:45 period of time.
Gotcha.
And I think I'm half stunned and I'm also just at peace because she's in my arms, I always had this thing where I haven't had a lot of deaths in my family, but I've had a few significant ones. And I'm one of the people that opts to be there in those moments. So I'm grateful that, for one, they resuscitated her enough for us to get there in time. They called several times and that, I was there and she took her last breath with me. And so everything about that day is it's slow motion. It's a lot of details. I recall feeling the fluids leave her body. I recall, by the time they pronounced her, she had already started, to sort of grow stiff. I think they call it like rigor mortis. I felt the heat drain out of her body. Nurses coming in, and Jody was there. Jody was her night nurse that night. And Dory was the daytime nurse, the one that came in at 7. I recall all of them just being around the bedside. They came in, brought extra blankets. I remember just saying, she's so cold. And they was like, we'll bring you more blankets. And they allowed wrap her. And like, I felt like this sensation under her diaper. And I was like, is she peeing? And like, I don't know, like my mind was playing tricks on me. I was like, still alive. I was like, maybe if you breastfeed her, she'll come back, those sort of like emotions. Justin was sort of in and out the room. Of course, he had to call and tell everybody, like, I could not fix my mouth to say,
right,
Justice died, so.
I was just about to ask you if he was there with you, if they allowed both of you guys to be there.
And so I remember they allowed me to change her diaper and they were like, yeah, so once, this sets in, the body does drain itself of the fluids. They let me brush her hair, dress her in some clothes. The day nurse, Dory, she actually does photography on the side. And so it was just, I learned after the fact that like, if they do lose a baby, even if she's not at work, they call her in because something we don't get right, like an emergency is, and like I didn't have like a typical birth. I didn't get those birth photos. And so she came in and, she was like, hey, I would like to take her photos. Would you allow me? And she for about 30 minutes. And they did that. The priest came in and they christened her. So she was christened that day. Photos of that have newborn photos of her, dressed. So I really thank Miss Dory for just creating those memories for me because, of course, in that moment, like I didn't have any of that. So I do have like quite a few keepsakes that I get to keep of her in that day. And they allowed us to stay there as long as we wanted. And I think we stayed there, like that was 7:45. I think finally I decided to give her over around 3:30. And that was just like my boobs were about to explode, like just the milk. They brought me in a pump. I'm sure I was super uncomfortable, but like I just couldn't feel anything, if that makes sense. A weird thing is they brought lunch. Of course, they allowed us to have a room. And so, of course, they come in, check, do you need anything? They served hamburger steak that day. And for years, I could not eat a hamburger steak. Just like the smell of a Wendy's burger or like something like instantly make me cry. And they sort of, they asked, did I want to do an autopsy? Yeah, because I opted to do that because I didn't have any answers at that point.
Right.
They were running tests to see what had happened, but they just assumed that it was NEC. But the results came back that she had late onset sepsis.
Really?
And when, of course, by this 28 days in, 4 weeks in, I was like, wait, that's something that they say, you can get during childbirth. They told me it was pretty hard to get it if you get a C-section because they do, just as a precaution, they give you antibiotics. And it usually presents itself in the first 7 days. She's 28 days old.
Right.
I had just been tested Tuesday. And Thursday, that is what took her out. So I think Dr. Blair called that next day. I think it was later that evening, around 6 that evening, and he was just stunned. He was just like, Toneka, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, what did I do? What happened? And the best way he could describe it, he was just like, it was just the 1% of 1%. Like nothing was typical about when she got it, why she got it, like what it caused, like the protocols were just so like they would make you scrub for minutes, like with this special soap and this. And I was there and I witnessed them, they make me get out the way. Everything had to be sterile, new gloves. Like, I don't know if I was like, could I have passed it from my breast milk or, like just all the things. And he did a really good, he called me that night and he scheduled for us to come in the next day so he could talk to us face to face. And he, of course, went over the records that the doctor there gave to him. And, he explained it to us the best that he could, was very sympathetic, and immediately recommended that I see a psychiatrist. I appreciate that. I needed it. He didn't allow me to just sit and blame myself. He called the doctor over the NICU called. I just constantly remember them saying, this is not your fault. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. But I still feel, so then I went from being happy that she's there and that she's thriving. None of this would have happened if you hadn't been as stressed, because I'm telling myself, like, I'm looking up, how do you get preeclampsia? How do you get HELP syndrome? And I was like, maybe I worked out too much. Maybe it's stressful. Maybe all of those things. And so, of course, the spiral of the blame game. But that day was a terrible, terrible day.
Think about it. How many hands helped raise you? How many voices spoke life over you? How many arms held you close? Black family is deep, and at Melanin Maternity, we celebrate every single part of it. We're not just a shop for mamas. We're a love letter to the entire village. From keepsake birth announcements that honor your newest blessing, to new dad gifts, to presents for the grandma who still prays over you, we have gifts that tell your family's story. Looking for holiday gear that actually represents us? We got that too. Because whether you're the one having the baby or the one making sure the baby always has love, you deserve to be celebrated. Shop Melanin Maternity on Etsy today by visiting melaninmaternity.etsy.com. Because our families, our stories, and our legacies deserve the spotlight.
Yeah. How did Justin deal with that day?
I can say in that moment, he was a rock. Like, I remember him, walking in and out, doing what needs to be done. I can't fathom what he felt because he had to do all the heavy lifting. I mean, he had to be concerned about me. I don't recall him crying. If he did, he didn't do it in front of me. I think I did a fair share of that for both of us. He allowed me to hold her like most of the whole time that we were there. And I recall after they brought her back from her photos, I said, like, do you want to hold her? And he was still like, no, like, hold her as long as you need to. And laid on the couch and he went to sleep. I got out the bed and I tucked her in, like underneath him. So I had her cradled in his arms and I took her so that, he could just have to look back on. In that moment, that I can only describe it as, him being that person for me to lean on, because I don't even think I considered, what he could have been feeling like in that moment, because it was just all I recall, like what I saw from my vantage point. And so.
Gotcha. I feel like I need a deep breath. What has the healing journey been like?
Up and down, and the sort of, I immediately started being a psychiatrist. I think I started off like on Lexapro or something like that. It was hard to, I guess, come to grips with her sort of, and I don't want to say like snatched away, but it was so real and then it was gone, I went through emotions of why even allow me to meet her if you were going to take her, I had a house fully baby ready. People, when she was born and when she made it past those brain scans, I think at like day 7, everybody was like, she's going to make it.
Yeah.
Go time. So like I had to sort of like move stuff out of the room and, kind of like close off her nursery, and getting her cremated. Well, of course we had to make decisions and stuff. So we opted to cremate her. I opted to not do a service. It's COVID. People only met her on FaceTime. Like, I remember telling Justin, what they gonna get up there and say? Like, who can eulogize her? Like, nobody knew her but us. Sorry, Dad, but they made it in, I think, the following day after she
Your
passed.
family?
Yeah. And my dad, he was born in, 58. He old school. So, of course, they come in and they give me hugs. And he says, baby, it's okay. You can always have another baby. And I was just like, wrong answer, So that's a big point of contention for a while, because that was like the first time something like that had happened, like in my immediate family. So like nobody knew how to navigate it. I did the psychiatry. I did EDMR therapy. So it's sort of like a trauma therapy. A lot of people, a lot of soldiers with post-traumatic stress. What it does is it helps you process a traumatic event. So you sort of have to go back into it while they're stimming you. So it's like this EMS, it's like the stimulating device that you hold in your hand, and something that connects to the brain, and rapid eye movements that help you process what you do there. And I did grief groups for a solid year because it was until I had Gyra where I took a break, where it was like, okay, you have to stop for 8 weeks because, you're having another C-section, you got a new baby. But I recall every week I was in somebody's chair, processing that. That day. Oh, and I also want to know, it took a while to do the autopsy. They did the autopsy, so I got those results, and then it took a while for them to cremate her because it was COVID. A lot of, I think, a lot of funeral homes weren't actively doing things, so it was like something where there was. Oh, that's what it was. People were dying from COVID too, so there was a flood of bodies. They backed up, basically.
Right.
I did not get her ashes back until like mid-July, I think.
Oh, wow.
And she passed 25th. And I remember that because I was out and one of the crazy things that I learned, when you're on maternity leave and your baby passes away, your maternity leave ends. So at least that's what happened at my job. So I was called back to work after I reported her death to the insurance company. She lived 28 days. She had a birth certificate. She had a Social Security card. She had life insurance. But of course, I have to report her death. And so they reported that. Of course, the job knew. But all of that going through the system effectively ended my maternity leave because I actually didn't have a live child to care for. And so there was an extra layer of stress and them trying to figure out ways how to give me the time I needed to heal, give me the time that I needed to grieve, because by design for those particular laws, I could not charge time to maternity leave anymore. And I recall speaking to HR and she asked, could I come back? I think it had to be like July 20th or something. And I was like, I don't even have my child's ashes back. Like, I'll come back if I have to come back, but I'm not gonna be any good to you. Like, I'm not. Thank goodness for her name's Jocelyn. Very understanding, and my company worked out a way where I didn't go back until like after Labor Day, but they created some stuff, they designed some stuff to allow me the time that I needed to grieve. So like that got pushed back out like several times. I thank them for favor in that department.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but I was stuck in a place for a very long time, and I feel like it was stunted, or like I think me becoming pregnant with the second child helped, well, not helped me, but delayed a lot of the stuff that I was feeling, because I just wanted to be a mom. Like I went from expecting a baby to having her early, being scared for her, being glad that she's back, that she's gonna survive. And then it was nothing. So it's like the life that I had before becoming pregnant, I found I couldn't make myself go back into that anymore, if that makes sense.
Oh, you're an entirely different person.
I couldn't do reading time with the babies. I don't have a baby. It was like so many things that, you're supposed to do with a kid at this age. And, like you just don't. So I was like in limbo. I felt like I was in this middle place where like I have all these feelings and these desires, but I can't act on it because I don't have a baby. And so I recall that being very tough. And I do think that there was a bit of, I don't know the word for it. And maybe you can, like this disillusion or something, where I knew nothing could replace her, but I sort of wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. It's like my body betrayed me. I'm supposed to be healthy. I'm not overweight. This and this. I'm supposed to have a baby. And so I think had I been in a better headspace mentally, the second baby wouldn't be here, because I think a lot of that was like grief induced. Let me, I'm going to be a mom, like sort of acting my own will.
I'm going to make this happen. Yeah.
Presented a lot of complications.
That concludes part 2 of Toneka's birth story. Be sure to join us next week to hear the conclusion of her story. And don't forget to share this episode with a mama who needs it.
Want to go deeper? The conversation doesn't have to stop here. Join Melanin Maternity, our digital Black birth community, where you'll get expert guidance, real support, and a sisterhood that sees you. From live Q&As with birth experts to empowering discussions with other Black mamas, we've got you covered. Click the link in the description and step into the community you deserve.